Lesson 1-1, variables and expressions. Our objective today is to write verbal expressions for algebraic expressions, and then also to write algebraic expressions for verbal expressions. That means you're given it in words and you need to put it in symbols, or you're given it in symbols and you need to be able to put it in words. So it doesn't directly have an algebra standard with this, but there are 8th grade standards which are similar to what we just have written there for the objective. Okay, some definitions. So vocabulary, a variable, a letter that stands for a value. You should know that already. An expression, it is a combination of variables, numbers, and operations. Algebraic expression definitely has variables. A numeric expression would be numbers and operations only. We're dealing with algebraic expressions, so it will have all of those things, variables, numbers, and operations. Verbal means there are words only. Algebraic means there are symbols only. And your job today will be to go from one to the other and back again. So you will need to be able to do both. The vocabulary list of the operations, we did this in pre-algebra. For addition, you may use sum or see sum, increased by, more than, plus. Subtraction, difference, decreased by, less than, or less and minus. I've got those two starred because, you know, those are the tricky ones. These two right here cause the most grief for students out of all of this list. The word than means you take what's written first and pull it behind. If somebody is 6 inches less than you, you would take your height minus 6. But if they say less only, 6 inches less you, it's exactly the same as using minus, and you'd say 6 minus yours. Okay, so less is equivalent to using the word minus. Less than is when you take the front part and bring it around to the back. Multiplication, you would see product times or simply multiplied by. Division, quotient, divided by also. I'm going to tell you this. When you're writing an algebraic expression, you got to be prepared to see any of those. And they might throw in something different that, you know, we haven't seen before, but not usually. Usually that's the all-encompassing list right there. But you got to be prepared to know what all of those mean. When it comes time for you having to write the verbal expression, I'm going to say this like a million times. Make it as simple as possible. Don't try to do anything fancy, because that's when you mess up. Make it as simple as possible. Use the simple ones. Plus, minus, times, divided by. Use the simple ones when you have to write the sentence. All right, so I need some help here. We are to write the algebraic expression for these verbal expressions. So first example, example A, 5 less than a number C. 5 less than a number C. What would be your algebraic expression, Octavia? C minus 5. How many of you think that is correct? Good, because it is. C minus 5. They're even going to tell you the variable to use, by the way. Okay, now, B. 9 plus the product of 2 and D. 9 plus the product of 2 and D. Jared. Sure, 2 times D plus 9. If you were sitting there thinking 9 plus 2 times D, or 2D, we would count that. That is correct because that's what it says. I will tell you that the standard form, and we'll talk more about that as the year goes on, is to have the constant term, the plain number, at the end of the expression just like it's there, 2D plus 9. But since it's written the other way, you could do it either way. All right, C, 2/5 of the area A. 2/5 of the area A, what would the algebraic expression be? Ben, 2/5 A. Because of means times. When you talk about a number times a variable, you just write the number in front. 2/5 A. Be careful about those that say something times the sum of or something times the difference of, because in order for a sum or difference to occur before a multiplication, what would have to be around the sum or the difference? Jared? Parentheses. So be careful on that, parentheses. Okay, now, those that we just did, honestly, you've had a lot more practice at those than you've had at writing the verbal expression. And no kidding, when you get to this part, please try to stay as simple as possible, and you need to use all words. So, D, 8x squared. What verbal expression could you use to make somebody look at it and write 8x squared? Because that's the goal, taking it so that somebody else could then put it back into an algebraic expression. Any ideas on 8x squared? Evan?
8 times x squared.
Okay. Let's go 8 times x squared. You could say 8 times x to the second power also. 8 times x to the second power also. All right. E, y to the 5th minus 16y. Ethan.
Y to the 5th minus 16y.
Okay, I'm going to make you say y to the 5th power, okay? When you do that, you do have to say power. Y to the 5th power, and then what?
Minus 16y.
Okay, you got to say an operation. Minus
16
minus the product of 16 and y, or minus 16 times y. Okay, don't just say 16y, because you're not telling an operation. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? You're not telling an operation. So y to the 5th power minus, I'm going to say the product of 16 and y. All right. Yeah, probably should. She said, shouldn't I write 16 out? Yeah, you're right, 16. Okay. 5 times the quantity, a squared plus b. So be careful on this one. My tree. You can. Let's do this. I'll get you started. 5 times what? The sum of, good. The sum of a squared and b. Oh, did I actually do that? Yeah, I did. 5 times the sum of a squared and b. Okay, so it's 5 times, which it is 5 times, and then the sum of, that makes the parentheses go around a to the second, or a squared, and b. Okay, now, back to the one on E. I'm thinking about it here a little bit. Y to the 5th power minus the product of 16 and y. I think he could have probably gotten by with y to the 5th power minus 16 times y. That probably would have been better. and it would have been fine. You just got to be really careful because sometimes, especially if they throw parentheses in there, you've got to think about what would make that happen. Let's see. Just like when he said 16y, don't just say that. You've got to write out every operation that occurred. So on D, we wrote times and squared because it's 8 times x squared, or x to the second power. So something to a power, you can say to that power. If it's squared or cubed, you can say squared or cubed, and that's the same thing. Y to the 5th power, so we took care of that. We took care of minus, and then you got to take care of 16 times y. F, 5 times, so we wrote the times. A to the 2nd power, she wrote a squared, and then the sum of those two things. So just make sure every operation is accounted for in writing those out. Okay, and I still am kind of a advocate of using the simplest words possible. Use the word plus if you can. Use the word minus if you can, and that will make it a lot simpler for you.